In the shadowed recesses of an ancient, creaking theater, a solitary figure hunched over his workbench, illuminated only by the dim glow of a flickering candle. The puppeteer, known to the villagers only as Marius, was a man of peculiar talents and even stranger obsessions. His latest creation, a puppet carved with exquisite detail and dressed in a miniature replica of Victorian finery, sat perched on the edge of the table, its glassy eyes reflecting the candlelight like twin orbs of captured flame. Marius's breath, heavy with anticipation, hung in the air like a tangible thing, mingling with the must of old wood and the faint, lingering scent of varnish. The theater, once a bustling hub of entertainment and laughter, now lay silent, its glory days long since faded into memory. Its walls, adorned with peeling paint and tapestries frayed with age, whispered secrets of the past, echoing with the faint, ghostly laughter of audiences long gone. Marius, a solitary figure in this forgotten world, found solace in the company of his creations, each puppet a fragment of his soul, a keeper of his darkest secrets. Born into a family of renowned puppeteers, Marius had inherited the theater as a young man, along with the burden of his family's legacy. His father, a master craftsman, had been a stern and unforgiving teacher, instilling in Marius a profound respect for the art of puppetry, but also a deep-seated fear of failure. The puppets, with their intricately carved features and lifelike movements, were not just inanimate objects to Marius, they were vessels of expression, capable of conveying emotions and stories far beyond the reach of mere words. Yet, beneath the surface of his dedication to the craft lay a well of unresolved trauma, memories of a childhood marred by loss and sorrow. Marius had long sought to bury these memories, to lock them away in the deepest recesses of his mind. But they refused to stay hidden. They found their way into his work, manifesting in the shadows of his creations, giving life to horrors that he dared not face. It was on a night much like this, with the wind howling outside and the candlelight casting eerie shadows across the room, that Marius's world began to unravel. The puppet on the table, his latest masterpiece, suddenly twitched, its wooden fingers clawing at the air as if grasping for something unseen. Marius froze, his heart pounding in his chest, as the puppet began to move of its own accord, its movements grotesque and unnatural. At first, Marius thought he was losing his mind, that the isolation and the weight of his secrets had finally driven him to madness. But as the puppet continued to move, reenacting scenes from Marius's past with chilling accuracy, he realized that something far more sinister was at night after night. The puppet would come to life, each performance a harrowing reenactment of a traumatic event from Marius's life. Scenes of his father's wrath, of bitter arguments and violent outbursts, played out before his eyes, each detail painstakingly replicated by the puppet's delicate movements. Marius watched, helpless and horrified, as his darkest memories were brought to life, his own creations turning against him in a macabre display of vengeance. As the days blurred into nights, Marius's sanity began to fray at the edges. The theater, once a place of refuge, had become a prison. The puppets his tormentors. He tried to destroy them, to rid himself of the cursed objects. But they always returned, their wooden bodies inexplicably repaired, their glassy eyes gleaming with malevolent intent. In his desperation, Marius sought answers in ancient texts and forbidden lore, delving into the dark arts in an attempt to understand the force that had taken hold of his creations. He learned of spirits and demons, of beings that dwelled in the shadows, feeding on human suffering and despair. Marius realized that in his obsession with puppetry, he had unwittingly opened a door to the supernatural. inviting something evil into his world. Determined to confront the entity that had cursed him, Marius prepared a ritual, a last desperate attempt to banish the darkness that had consumed his life. On the stroke of midnight, with the theater shrouded in darkness and the storm raging outside, Marius began the incantation, his voice rising above the howl of the wind. The puppets, gathered around him in a macabre audience, began to move, their movements frenzied and chaotic. The air crackled with energy, the candle flames dancing wildly as the entity revealed itself, a swirling mass of shadows that coalesced into a humanoid form. Marius faced the creature, his heart racing, as it spoke in a voice that was both ancient and chillingly familiar. It spoke of pain and suffering, of the power of secrets and the darkness that dwells in the hearts of men. Marius listened, his resolve faltering, as it revealed the truth of his family's legacy, of a pact made with the darkness, a sacrifice of innocence for the sake of art. Marius realized, in that moment of horrifying clarity, that he was not the first to be tormented by the entity. It had been with his family for generations, a dark guardian of their craft. With every ounce of strength he possessed, Marius fought back, using the knowledge he had gained to sever the connection between the entity and his creations. The ritual reached its climax, the energy in the room reaching a fever pitch as Marius channeled his fear and anger into a single, desperate plea for release. And then, as suddenly as it had begun, it was over. The entity vanished, the shadows dissipating into the air, leaving Marius alone in the silent theater. The puppets lay motionless on the floor, their strings cut, their eyes dark and lifeless. Marius collapsed, exhausted and broken, but free from the curse that had plagued him. In the days that followed, Marius dismantled his workshop, destroying his creations and vowing never to return to the art of puppetry. The theater remained, a silent monument to his family's legacy. But Marius walked away, determined to leave the darkness behind and start anew. Yet, even now, when the wind howls outside and the shadows grow long, Marius cannot shake the feeling that somewhere, in the darkness, the puppets are still watching, their glassy eyes gleaming with secrets best left forgotten.